I've started a podcast. That's how crazy it is. It's a D&D one. So
oh, fabulous! Yes, because you do that quite a lot now, don't you?
I do. I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
It is so much fun, isn't it?
Oh yes, we recently had we started what was going to be just a one shot a couple of weeks ago because one of our players wasn't available. So we thought we'll do a two player one shot.
Yeah.
And it's sort of grown a little bit into a sort of mini campaign.
It's become a campaign, yeah.
Yeah. So much so that I've even got a poster for it. So we've got two characters, both of whom have some form of relationship to a deity.
Right.
So we've got a paladin and a warlock.
Oh, brilliant fun! So there's tension already.
Yeah, and obviously, he's very much an archetypical paladin.
So lawful good, all that gubbins, yeah.
I wouldn't say lawful.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
I would say chaotic good.
Oh, so he's a more decent person than a normal paladin then.
No, he makes somewhat off-color suggestions.
Okay.
For the greater good.
Right. Okay.
So we could how about we could just like take the goods and then just keep the money. It's like I'm down for that.
Okay.
Obviously, I'll donate some to the temple. Obviously,
right.
But we could just totally keep the money.
So he's kind of like a morally compromised paladin. I kind of like that.
I think he justifies his sort of moral compromising in that very religious way. Whereas my warlock has a very confrontational relationship with his deity. He is completely irreverent.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, he's an Asimar of that same deity.
Right.
And basically, the idea he's an Asimar descendant of the Raven Queen. Mm-hmm. Fuck knows how that happens, but
how?
So he one day when he was young, he fell into the wrong crowd, fancied themselves sort of amateur wizards, amateur necromancers. They got their hands on a high level raised dead scroll. Mm-hmm. None of them were sort of powerful enough to do it themselves, but if they channel their energies together, they should be able to use the scroll to raise the dead. Mm-hmm. And it worked. Pulled the corpse out of the ground. Everyone else ran away, leaving my character to basically fight this zombie off. And he was about to get killed when the Raven Queen sort of intervened and said, basically, because you are of my blood and you have allowed this shit to happen, you're in the shit now.
Oh dear.
So I give you a choice. You can either I can give you some power and you can dedicate your life to eradicating the undead, or I can just leave you to die now.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, for fuck's sake. And from that point on, he has resented everything from that point on. So he's got a very sort of
like an antagonistic relationship towards his deity. That's interesting.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
that's that's fun though. I like that. Like as a dynamic, that's great fun.
And that's why the team is called the Godbotherers.
Great.
Not by themselves. They don't call themselves that. Everyone else calls them.
Everyone calls them that, though. That's what they are, yeah. Brilliant. What god does the paladin follow?
Lathander.
It's Lathander, the Dawn Lord. Okay.
Yes.
So the goody two-shoes.
Very much so, yes. He's a Leonin as well, so which is really...
God. So properly like goody two-shoes archetype paladin, yeah.
Oh yes, and there's a whole kind of running gag about him just basically being this rock star paladin, with the sun shining behind him and the wind in his hair, in his mane.
Yeah. Brilliant, absolute brilliance. I mean, I love that though, don't you? Like messing about with character archetypes. Like, in our current campaign, Tom. Tom the Vicar, he plays a druid, but he's very much not your standard druid. He fucking hates nature. Hates it. He's got this connection to nature. He's the descendant of a particular circle of druids called the Silver Circle. And he can hear nature in his head whenever he's near it. He can hear the voices of trees and of plants growing and of insects in the trees. And it kind of drives him slightly mad. So he actually hates nature. He's a dark druid.
I like that concept. I really do.
It's fun. It's fun. He constantly wears, like, whenever he's walking through the woods or whatnot, he wears this cloak that has got all of these really hideous symbols sort of woven into it that are antithetical to nature. That sort of wards nature off. So he likes cities, he likes urbanscapes, he likes areas where nature has been suppressed and ruined.
I like it. That's great.
It's great fun. Yeah. It really is. And Tom plays it to the hilt, you know?
Host of characters and ideas and all kinds. Yeah, the way the imagination just fires off into the distance. It's amazing. I love
it when like players do that. Yeah. You know, when they take the characters and they mess about with them. And I mean, it took us a while to get there because nobody had played D&D before. I'd played it but hadn't dungeon mastered before. But by the end of the first session, they were really getting into it and starting to do stuff that was really fun. Like, Tom kept moonbeaming himself because he's a werewolf. So, you know, quite a clever tactic, actually.
That is really good, actually.
Quite a clever little tactic, that one.
We're planning to do an evil level 20 one-shot at some point.
Wow. 21?
Level 20 one-shot.
Bloody hell. Yeah. So, like, God tier.
God tier evil shit.
Yeah,
like,
wow.
You know, so everyone is Sauron. You know, everyone is.
Yeah. So your guys are going to be like breaking realities over their knee. And
I've got a
murdering gods and shit like that.
I've got a Hexblade Warlock, which is perfect for that. His name is Mortifex.
Wow. Mortifex, that's great. That's just like you could tell what he is just from the name.
Yes. The thing is, it's short for Mortimorphexis, but
I love it.
It's going to be an evil one shot, but it's going to have a definite comedic bent. So he's you know, everyone calls him Morty. He hates it. Everyone's like, "Where's Rick? Fuck off." Yeah, and the fact that he could rip the soul from your very body isn't going to stop people taking the piss.
Yeah, it doesn't factor into it. No. Yeah, of course.
So I mean, I've got I mentioned a long while ago that I had a sort of wizard necromancer idea, and do you know what happened? The planets aligned, and Wizards of the Coast managed to put together an official bit of character option, which basically means I don't need to homebrew shit for this one anymore.
Oh, you could just do it.
I could just do it.
Brilliant!
So the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft introduces these things called dark gifts, which have a beneficial component and a negative component. And the one that took my eye was Touch of Death, which basically means anytime you touch anything, anyone, 1d10's worth of necrotic damage.
Oh, Jesus. So a lot of stuff you can just kill, like villagers or whatever. If you touch them, they're going to die.
Yeah, pretty much. And that I originally had homebrewed that sort of feat for my character. In fact, to be fair, the official one is more powerful than the homebrew one that I did. Yeah. So because I gave myself, I think, disadvantage on con saves as a trade-off. No disadvantage on con saves. You just do this shit.
Right.
So I gave it to her, and now she's just kind of waiting in the wings, ready to be played. So
that's awesome.
If you really want, I'll happily hop in, maybe for like a session or two on your game. Play this.
That would be brilliant. Yeah, that would be great. Anyone we can get in is going to be good fun. You know, we've got to pick it back up because we haven't done it really since before like COVID and whatnot. We really need to pick it back up. You know,
I'm happy to step in whenever you want.
Yeah. Well, I'll get it running again because I actually went and visited Ray and John for the first time since the lockdown and whatnot last weekend. It was great fun, really good fun catching up. So yeah, we need to get it running. Also, I need to catch up on what's been going on in Wizards of the Coast with like the more recent books, because a lot of the books I haven't read, a lot of the more recent stuff.
Are you running this through D&D Beyond by any chance?
No, we meet up and just play it. You know?
I would recommend utilizing D&D Beyond. If I were to just invite you to a campaign that I've created, you would now then have access to everything that I've purchased.
Oh, brilliant!
Through D&D Beyond, because they've got content sharing, which allows you to. So whoever's got stuff in the campaign, it's all shared.
It's all there, yeah. That's
So
brilliant.
I've got most of the source books. I don't have any. I don't have any of the adventures beyond Lost Mine of Phandelver, but I've got the majority of the source books, and I'll be picking up some of the rest next month
Right.
because I've got a bonus coming, so I can afford it.
Have they released yet in 5th edition a book about Planescape?
Not yet.
They
I am
haven't, have
so
they?
looking forward to that.
Oh god, that is my favorite setting in D&D by a country mile.
I can't.
Because
I want that and Spelljammer.
Spelljammer's going to be Spelljammer. You know, those always come towards the end of editions. Though they have this tendency to turn up at the end of editions because they're so big.
Mm.
You know, I mean, Planescape you can do anything with. It is literally like the DM's toolkit. You can do whatever you want when you set an adventure in Planescape. And there's so much potential, of course, because of course, you know, characters can be launched into some other realm just by walking under an arch or through a door
Yes.
or whatever.
I'd actually homebrewed a spell which would allow for navigation of sigil. Only the tourists call it sigil. It's sigil.
It's Sigil, right?
It's because I was sort of putting the bones together of a campaign setting myself. It's a small campaign setting, sort of on the scale of like a Dark Domain or something like that.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like
a little pocket
yeah.
dimension.
It's a demi-plane. It's in terms of land mass, it's perhaps no bigger than maybe half a Northern Ireland. It's not that big as a land mass.
Well, that's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can literally do what you like then.
Yeah. So
there's nothing binding you with regards to lore or anything like
exactly.
that.
I mean, yeah. So there is. I mean, I can tie little bits of lore from various realms because the idea of this place is that it's connected to every material sphere.
Right, so you could you could have characters turning up in like Baldur's Gate or Arm or wherever.
Exactly. So you can travel to and from all these worlds via
Waterdeep and the like.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, you could travel from Toril to Eberron to Exandria. You know, you could jump in on Critical Role if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
But this is like a hub for the material plane. I mean, it's not a patch on Sigil in terms of the amount of places you can go, but it's
right. Because Sigil is like, at its ideal, it's so difficult to realize because you can you could walk down the street and see entities from any plane anywhere, anywhere. You know, it's incredible. I mean, I love that.
This is very much this is partially inspired by that, but it's got elements. It's got elements of like Asgard. It's got elements of Themyscira, Wakanda, Hogwarts. It's very much a kingdom of magic.
So it's like a hodgepodge of like fantasy universes and all of their rules all sort of smashed together.
Yeah, of sorts. Yeah, and the idea that in most worlds, sort of higher level magic magic spell levels beyond 10 are cut off for some reason. For whatever reason,
right?
You can't. For example, in Forgotten Realms, if the spell plague cuts off any spells that are higher than level 9.
Right.
Whereas in here, there are elements where you are able to harness more powerful magics. And these would be sort of like higher level boons that your players could get. I was talking about a spell. It's called Fridoon's True Direction, which basically means you cast it. It's 4th level divination. And you cast it, and you instantly know the best route to your chosen destination, and it'll account for any route, any secret route, any lost or forgotten routes, mundane or magical transport. So if you need a plane shift somewhere, it'll tell you exactly when you need to go to do the plane shifting. So it'll take you wherever you need to go.
Oh, in Sigil, that'd be amazing.
Yes. So in fact, Fridoon herself devised this spell purely because it was a fucking nightmare trying to navigate through.
Trying to navigate Sigil,
So it's like she casts a spell, right? Okay, I know where I'm going, and it even compensates for changes. So
I was going to say, does it compensate for the fact that Sigil isn't set?
It is basically a magical sat-nav. It is the D&D TomTom. So you cast it and you're instantly able to know where you go, and spell ends once you get to your destination.
I love of the books I've got, I love the ones that stat like the really big monsters, like the devils and like the actual gods, because they are effectively you lose.
Yes.
It's unless you do something really weird and special, or the DM creates some means of defeating them for you.
Yeah.
you ain't surviving
But the
that.
fact that they're statted means that there is some possibility of killing them.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
fight them
yeah.
technically. You
The,
can fight like Demogorgon and whatnot. You'll
yeah.
lose, but you
The
can
the
fight
only
them,
exception to that is the Lady of Pain,
which is not statted and
and
hopefully
never
never
will
will
be.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what would you do? I mean, what would you do with her stats? Because the fact that she keeps every god of every
Yeah.
mythology out of Sigil,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. There's no way of defining what she is like in terms of the rules.
No, she's a tool for the DM, to be honest, isn't she?
Yeah, of
She is
course she
not.
is.
She is left intentionally vague in terms of her motivations and
Right. Even her
machinations.
background, of
Exactly.
course.
Yeah.
She's the ultimate mystery. Nobody knows
Yeah.
where she comes from, what she is. She's not a
No.
goddess
She
because she doesn't like to be
and
worshipped, you
and
know?
she is infinitely more terrifying than any deity.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's so inscrutable, and just looking at her can offend her.
Mm.
So you've got to be very
I
careful around her.
there's a little bit of backstory in one of my characters. I think I mentioned him before. Good old Tordin, my Thorn knockoff. I had to come up with a homebrewed subclass for him because I couldn't do what I wanted to do with him within the rules. So I just kind of
Right,
just
right.
homebrewed something nice for him, which is now published on the D&D Beyond homebrew thing. So if you want to check that out, you can do.
Uh-huh.
Arcane Weapon Master, which is a fighter subclass. Um,
Right.
uh, During his youth, he travelled the plains with. It's basically like a school trip.
Yeah.
So he and a handful of other kids were kind of like escorted along by some teachers at his school. Just sort of like, and now we're heading off to the elemental plane of fire. Does everyone have their flame-proof potions ready? Good, good. Let's go through the portal. So they'd use Sigil as a sort of hub point for traveling.
Yeah. Which makes
Unless,
sense.
of course, they could directly travel, in which case they would. But in certain cases, they'd have to go through Sigil. And they were told if you would ever see the Lady of Pain, is to stop, turn around, and don't look at her.
Yeah, don't look at her.
It was
Just don't do anything.
It's all in a very kind of matter of fact kind of school
Yeah.
mistress kind of way. That should you ever see the Lady of Pain, remember to stop, drop, and don't look at her.
It's like if you see a barking dog or something,
Yeah.
or if it starts to rain, or it's an environmental hazard.
Yes, it's like the old warnings of nuclear attack in the
Yeah,
in the
yes,
1960s and 70s. You know, stop, drop, and cover.
Yeah,
Sticky
and
tape on the
probably just
windows.
as useless, you know.
Yeah, but except in this case, it isn't as it's sort of they've kind of they've been around long enough to know not to fuck with the Lady of Pain.
Well, as long as you don't draw her
Yes.
attention in some way, you'll be fine.
And unless you're not like some sort of cocky minotaur who just because he can never get lost in a maze starts killing Davos just to get her attention, and then goes, all right, go on in, maze, and the maze is just 1 million mile long corridor.
Oh God, I miss Spoonie.
Yeah,
I do, and I miss Counter Monkey. I'm telling you,
yeah,
I really do.
It's kind of sad really for him because he's
It is. I know.
He's a troubled lad, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and it's the kind of thing where you kind of want to help him, but it's impossible, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the moment, it's impossible. He's unreachable right now.
Yeah.
It seems.
And
I don't know whether he ever will be. I mean, I'd love him to come back. I really would. I still think there's enough good faith that if he started making videos again, and if he sort of like explained the situation, I still think there's enough good faith there for him.
You'd have to play it very carefully, I think.
He would. He would have to play it really carefully.
He has burned a few bridges.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, he hasn't crashed and burned half as badly as some of the ex members of that guy with the glasses.
No, that oh Christ!
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jesus.
That was
an implosion of cosmic proportions.
Right. It just kept going as well, didn't it? It just kept going. I mean, at the beginning of that situation, there were things I could have just sort of forgiven, as maybe just like, okay, they're a little internet company, they didn't know what they were doing, and that's why, it could be chalked up to ignorance. But as it went on, it's like, no, No, some of this stuff is fetid. It was the Justin stuff that did it for me. That's what did it for me. It was the fact that they allowed that guy to keep going to cons and whatnot and didn't warn them what was going on.
I'm trying to remember the details now.
Oh, the Juwario thing.
Oh yeah.
Where he was essentially, as it's been revealed now, he was a rapist and a predator. You know.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah. Right. And they knew. And they did not warn the cons, or where he was still going to cons and whatnot after they realized.
Yeah.
It's like, that's unforgivable. That's unforgivable.
Yeah. Agree.
They didn't even warn the other members of that guy with the glasses who were close to him, like the women, for one thing. They could have warned the women, couldn't they? You know, don't accept invitations from this guy. Don't be alone with this guy.
Yeah.
It's pretty damning. It's pretty damning.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't hear much of that until, well, I didn't hear any of it until just now, to be perfectly honest. I knew he took his own life, but I wasn't sure. You know, I would have just chalked that up to depression.
Well, that's the sad thing. I mean, obviously, when he took his own life, people had identified with him so strongly. You know, they liked him so much, and there was this outpouring of grief on the internet. And when this was revealed, which was in the midst of that guy with the glasses controversy, people went to bits. People went to absolute bits. There were people who had like created their YouTube careers based on Justin. You know.
Yeah.
And who'd like spoken with him at cons and whatnot and found him to be pleasant, and it turns out he was a monster. He was an absolute monster.
That's got to break people, hasn't it? Really. At
Yeah.
the end of the day. I mean, it's especially at that level. I mean, I get disappointed whenever someone whose work I've enjoyed turns out to be a sex pest or something.
To be an arse, basically.
I mean, Jeremy Soule is an example there.
Yeah.
I mean,
wow.
I'm really annoyed because I've got a fucking signed copy of the Skyrim soundtrack, and I'm like, I was really chuffed when I got it, and then this came out, and I'm like, you fucking cunt, why,
I started to have
now I have to kind of play that whole kind of, separating the art from the artist bullshit.
Yeah.
Which
is the way to go.
Yeah.
It doesn't dilute the fact that his work meant something to you. You know, that is yours. That's between you and the work and the art. Yeah.
It's the same.
But even so, it's one of those things. It's part of being an adult, isn't it? You just got to get over it. You've just got to like work through it. I mean, much as I adore David Bowie, and I still do, I love him and his work to bits. I think he was an amazing guy. There's no arguing with the fact that he was sleeping with what were essentially like very, very young girls, as rock stars do. There's no getting over that. There's no getting around that. That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Now, he wasn't a rapist or an abuser or anything to that effect. Insofar as I'm aware, it seems to have been totally consensual, But even so, it's
a little on the dodgy side,
it is really dodgy. It's really dodgy, but it's something you've got to get over. It's a difficult thing.
It's Lovecraft, isn't it? Again,
it's Lovecraft. I mean, Lovecraft is a very good template.
The man's works are seminal and will continue to live, but he was a fucking massive racist.
Oh, he was. He was a racist. He was an anti-Semite. He was a homophobe. He was a misogynist. He was a terrible man.
Yeah.
But Lovecraft's an interesting one because he's a very good template for how people adopt those positions. Because when you look into the man's life, he was such a feeble, weak, broken, afraid human being of everything, of humanity, of existence. He did not like living. That much is clear, certainly not in the time and culture that he did. And it's easy to see how someone who is such a general misanthrope, which he was a total misanthrope, he hated humanity, could come to those positions, as awful as they are.
Yeah.
He was broken. He was a broken guy,
Apparently, he did soften up on the whole hatred of black people thing a little bit towards the end of his life. Oh, he still hated Jews, though. He was all.
Yeah, which is ironic because he married a Jewish woman.
Yeah.
his life is full of contradictions. He married a Jewish woman. One of his best friends was gay and openly gay, who he spent long summers with. You know, it's really strange. It's a very odd circumstance and situation you've got there.
Yeah. I think it comes across to me that a lot of it is internalized, isn't it? It's sort of he may well have been gay himself and denied it beyond...
I don't know what he was. No. I get the impression from what I've read that he had a problem with sex in general.
Yeah.
I think he may have been asexual.
Oh, that makes
sense.
I think
he may have been asexual, because it's certainly not something that he had much knowledge of or was particularly interested in. That much is fairly clear.
Fascinating. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, I think he may have been asexual at a time when there was no concept of what that was, really. There was no term for what that was, you know?
Yes.
But yeah, it's H.P. Lovecraft. It's C.S. Lewis, of course. It's C.S. Lewis. So many of us who enjoy fantastical things grew up with the Chronicles of Narnia. They were the first books I ever read when I was before I even went to school. They were the first real books I ever read. But C.S. Lewis was a monster.
Contemporary example, of course, J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling, yeah. Yes. I mean, I really feel for like the trans men and women who grew up with Harry Potter and who have some connection to it. Because unfortunately, she's still around, and she's still
she's still tweeting about that shit.
When I first heard about it, I was so prepared to give her the benefit of the doubt. I was so prepared to like, well, maybe she's got some bad information. Maybe this is more a matter of ignorance than malice, you know? No. She's a malicious, nasty piece of work, isn't she? And I am shocked, you know? I am shocked. You know what did it for me? When I started reading about her pseudonym, and I was like, that can't be true. That cannot be true. That must be bullshit. It's too ridiculous, you know? And then you go and research it, and actually, her pseudonym, Dr. Robert Gilbrandt, is actually named after a 19th century eugenicist who created conversion therapy.
Sweet Jiminy Christmas. This was
right.
Yeah, I had no idea.
And Dr. Robert Gilbrandt writes books about a trans serial killer who kills women. It's
Ouch.
like, wow, this woman is like, she's gone over the edge, you know. There's something wrong here.
Yeah.
You know? She's getting to the point where she's going to be remembered more for this than for Harry Potter, you know?
And that's a dangerous, that's a fucking achievement, really. When you think about it, Harry Potter is global and beloved by millions, billions even. And yet, if she goes down in history for basically being, the author who hated the trans,
which I think she's in danger of.
That is an achievement and a half.
Right, and it's the way she does it as well. Like, she always does it in this very sort of weaselly way, where she shares something from an anti-trans website or something, and then she doubles back on it and says, "Oh well, I wasn't sharing it because of that. I was sharing it because of its feminist applications." It's like, no, fuck you, fuck you. You know, and not only that, like it's ignoring the fact that trans women are women. You know, so it's obviously any self-proclaimed feminism that doesn't include trans women isn't feminism.
It's turfism, isn't it? It's
turfism. It's absolutely turfism. Fuck off, you know. But I was really shocked at the extent of it, the depth of it, because that whole thing with her pseudonym. When I first heard that, I was like, okay, that has got to be bullshit. It's got to be bullshit. That must be something that's been like retroactively applied, you know. And I went and researched it, and no, she's been writing as Dr. Robert Gilbrandt for a long time. And her excuse is amazing. Oh well, it's just a name I happened to cobble together. Bullshit. You know, there's coincidence, and then there's just like impossibility.
She'll start to me. I've decided to pick a new pseudonym, one completely random.
Right.
Hans Asperger.
Yeah. If it was something like very general, like John Smith or something, then I could possibly buy it.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's that name in association with fiction that depicts trans women as predatory serial killers, it's like, no, bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
I mean, historically, has there ever been a case of a trans serial killer outside of fiction?
I don't think that has.
None spring to mind. I mean, you'd think something like that would be noteworthy.
Right.
You know.
Well, the stereotype tends to come from like old hard-boiled detective fiction. There is this like sort of in the 1950s and 1940s when you were getting a lot of this sort of these like really hard-boiled mysteries. One of the tropes that came up is like the femme fatale that's not the femme fatale. That kind of thing, or the serial killer who actually turns out to be trans in some way, whether they're transvestite or transsexual, and it seems to have filtered into popular consciousness somehow. It's a trope that both exists in fiction and has become accepted as some kind of bizarre reality, even though it's not.
No. Well, that's it. I mean, you see, the good examples are Psycho. And Silence
of the Lambs, yeah. I mean, Silence of the Lambs tries very hard to sidestep it, because it explicitly contains that line, Billy is not a real transsexual, he thinks he is, he tries to be, but that doesn't help. That doesn't really help. It's still portraying the stereotype,
Yeah.
And it's ironic because, of course, the truth of the matter is that trans individuals are far more likely to be victims of violence and certainly of murder than the perpetrators of it.
Yeah.
Far more
it's a shame we don't get enough fiction depicting that side of things. The more I suppose historically accurate side of things. And I think TV does a good job these days. A lot of police procedurals will tackle that sort of thing.
Yeah,
with varying degrees of success, but at least they're trying.
Yeah, but at least it's there, isn't it? You are starting to get more representation in certain kinds of popular fiction. That's for damn sure. Children's media is leading the charge on that.
Yeah,
it seems to me. It's so weird.
It's a mass. I've noticed a huge sort of increase in saturation of sort of diversity and inclusivity and representation in children's media.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And I think that's what ultimately is annoying the right wing types off. Is the fact that I mean, in a way, I can kind of see where they're coming from. It's just this sudden glut of stuff that just offends their sensibilities. It's not a slow trickling. It's a sort of easing in, which I think it's
an explosion of, isn't it? It's an efflorescence of.
Exactly. I think they would have, if it had just been a sort of slow trickling. They wouldn't have noticed, and it would have just been a thing.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "Oh, gay people on telly, whatever." But now it's like, there's too many queers and fags, and I'm like,
but the thing is, there's nothing they can do about it. Ultimately, it's the genie's out of the bottle now. I mean, young people now, like younger generations, they don't care about this shit at all.
No.
It's just a thing. It's a cultural thing. They talk about being LGBTQ, they don't really care. It's just what they are,
and it's fucking wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. It is really wonderful.
That sense of normality about it now.
Yeah. I mean, did you watch the Netflix She-Ra?
I did not, and
I loved it. And I loved it to bits.
The interesting thing is, I am the sucker for nostalgia, which is why I think the He-Man show is probably going to be more down my street than.
God almighty, that trailer is fucking ace.
It is, isn't it?
It's great. Whoever chose the soundtrack needs a raise.
Oh yes, I will buy that. I will buy that man a pineapple.
That said, did you see that Adam now has an honest-to-God like magical boy transformation?
He does.
Rainbows and everything, like the way the clothes the lack of clothes form around him. It's an honest-to-God magical boy transformation.
It is.
Love it.
And I do like it. I think it's sort of like the I was always kind of when say the Filmation versions of both He-Man and She-Ra, right? Whenever they have their transformations, He-Man sticks his hand up and he just gets struck by lightning and boom, there he is, He-Man, and he points it to Cringer, boom, Battle Cat. She-Ra has a little bit more flamboyance in her. She holds the sword aloft, and then the energy sort of spirals around her, and she transforms within the spiral, which I always thought was just a little bit cooler, you know?
Yeah. Well, you don't really see He-Man's, do you? He kind of changes in between frames, doesn't he?
Yeah,
but not this
he
time.
Sort of gets zapped by lightning, flashes a bit, and then it's He-Man. But then again,
it's He-Man,
because Prince Adam and He-Man are exactly the same song.
Yes,
it doesn't really make this stuff
doesn't make the slightest bit of difference. No, but I love the look of it. I mean, I think it looks great. I mean, I adored the Netflix She-Ra, I've got to say, and it is, in many respects, what I loved about it is that it's the anti-nostalgia.
Yes,
it's that wonderful storytelling whereby it's but in the nicest way. It's not didactic. It's not wagging the finger at the fans of the original She-Ra. It's as loving of the original She-Ra as it is sort of drawing away from it, you know? And that's a wonderful thing. It's very clever. It's a very clever balance to hit. Like, there's a point in it where it even dares to separate She-Ra from the sword. You know, the sword gets broken at one point in the story, because of course that was always the thing. It's always been about the magical artifact, the magical sword that does this, that does that. This dares to do away with that and sort of say that the power is in Adora. It's not about the MacGuffin. It's not about the object. It's about the person. It's really clever.
Yeah, the original He-Man show did that first. There was an episode where Skeletor tricked He-Man thinking he'd killed someone.
Right.
And he felt obviously, utterly ashamed and shocked and terrified. And he threw the sword into the pit by Grayskull and gave up being He-Man because of that.
Because of that.
And then obviously he learns that he'd been tricked and no one had died, and he'd have to go fucking fishing the sword out of the chasm.
Out of the ravine, yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm surprised by the level of maturity some of those old cartoons demonstrated.
Mm-hmm. Especially He-Man, because there are times when it can be really goofy and silly and absurd, and I like that. I'll be honest. I kind of hope. I mean, it's definitely leaning into the campery, and the kitsch of the original. The color palette of this new show, it is rainbow colored, isn't it? It is completely rainbow colored. So that's great. I think it's fair to assume that it's going to be leaning into the camp and the kitsch.
What I love about it is the fact that it takes the best of the Filmation and the Mike Young productions.
Yes,
because the physicality and the shapes of all the characters very, very reminiscent of the 2002 series.
Very
but
much
the
so.
stylings, the costume design is 82 perfect, right down to a T.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I really am looking forward to it. I mean, I'm really liking the He-Man media in general at the moment. There's some good stuff out there. It's a nice palate cleanser after the wankery that's being applied to Transformers, you know?
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, let's not.
What
were they thinking?
The last half, to be fair, I mean, I enjoyed the Bumblebee movie.
Yeah, the Bumblebee movie is fine. Yeah. It's a you know what? It's not like it didn't. I will say this: it didn't give me a headache.
No. It's the movie we should have got in 2007.
Yeah. It's the only live action Transformers film that hasn't given me a splitting bloody headache. So there's that.
Yeah, and the fact that
and it's okay. It's a decent
it's
like.
It's a fun romp. It is very redolent of the 80s. In terms of filmmaking style, and it's a love letter to Spielberg. It's what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a nice, fun sort of popcorn muncher, isn't it? You know,
Although it's so obvious. They're just hammering home the fact that it's set in the 80s with just every little 80s reference they can get in.
Yeah.
You compare that to a movie actually filmed in the 80s. It's everything, it just is. Whereas, remember, we're in the 80s, here's some Bon Jovi.
It starts to get grating after a while, doesn't it? That kind of nostalgia, it kind of makes you grit your teeth a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. You see, Stranger Things doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't. It feels like it is set in the 80s. Which is lovely. I mean, that's a really cool thing. It doesn't really sort of hammer it home to you.
I still have to catch up on that. I'm a couple of seasons behind.
Oh, you're still a couple of seasons behind? Yeah. Right. I was going to say something then, which would have spoiled something, so I'm not going to say that.
First 2 seasons, and the rest I need to catch up on.
Right. I liked the last season a lot, actually. I think it dipped in season 2 a little bit. I think it kind of maybe sort of like didn't know where it was going, but it picks up again in season 3 and feels like it's got a story arc again, which is nice.
Right then, I'm going to have a cigarette, I'm going to make a cup of tea, and then we can get some Shadow Man stuff sorted. How's that sound?
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I've been recording this, by the way, so do you mind if I keep all of this in the podcast?
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, carry on. I've got no
Brilliant.
objections.
I mean, this is the way Strange Playgrounds goes, you know.
Just feel free to edit my voice and make me say whatever weird and wonderful thing you want to.
Did you see I did an episode a few weeks back with a guy called Jack Graham. He's a Marxist scholar. He's amazingly intelligent guy. We wanted to talk about Alien 3, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I had to call the episode not Alien 3 in the end, because we talked for like 2.5 hours about everything but Alien 3. Because that's the way it goes. Although we did manage to do it last night. We did manage to get a chat about Alien 3 out last night. We were very disciplined, I thought. We were very disciplined.
Don't expect that level of discipline from me.
No, nor me either. Right, I'm going to grab a cup of tea as well, actually.
Back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. What I should do now, ladies and gents, is just sit here and talk shit.
I can still hear you.
Yeah, that's what I should do. Just talk shit and just keep all of this in while you're off making tea.
Yeah, no, you carry on, do that.
I'm not going to do that.
No problems, no sounds of tea making right next to my microphone.
I know, it's a nice sort of ASMR thing for the people at home.
Yes.
That's what it is.
So, I'm going to be staring at you. That's something I could probably do. A bit of an ASMR channel, purely on domestic bliss.
I'm too busy. I can't do that. I've been too much of a rush with things at the moment.
I'm never busy enough, it seems.
There's so many projects going on at the moment. I don't know where my head's at, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it sort of bakes my own. I mean, there's plenty of things I want to try and do, but it's just as soon as I try and conceptualize the whole thing, I'm like, oh god, no.
It's too big. It's too big. I had that in the first lockdown because this TV series Nick and I have been working on. I got it done. I got the scripts done in the first lockdown, and I think, looking back on it now, it was so clearly a coping mechanism.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
it was so clearly a coping mechanism. I went nuts. I just like ran myself ragged writing these scripts, and there's 10 episodes. The first one and the last one are feature length. The others are about an hour. It's crazy the amount of work that we both put into that during those first few weeks.
Suffice to say, I look forward to the finished product.
Yeah, well, we're working towards it. We're getting there. We've been having interviews with actors and actresses and whatnot. We talked to a lady called Zara Pythias recently, and she's awesome. She is one of the. Have you seen Doctor Strange?
Yes.
You know Mads Mikkelsen's character and his sort of ninja sorcerer hangers-on.
Yes.
She's one of them.
Oh, nice.
She's awesome. She's this. After I spoke to her, I went and looked up some video of her because she does loads of like martial artist stuff in Hollywood and in films and TV. And she's friggin' amazing. Friggin' amazing. We wanted her for a particular role, and she seems really interested. So it's like, ooh, that's cool.
Nice.
That was fun. It was fun talking to her. Actually, it was really fun.
I'm even more.
But she knows Mads.
Oh, of course she does.
I was like,
yes.
the jealousy.
Oh yeah, of course, yes.
The jealousy.
I imagine as soon as she mentioned his name, your knees started quivering, didn't they?
Right, it's just insane. Yes. Yeah, I mean, Nick and Alex, who's the other guy we're working with, they kind of want Mads for this project. And I said, like, if you manage it, you're gonna have to employ someone to keep me away from him. You do realise that, right? Yeah. You're gonna have to employ a minder or something. Yeah. And the worst of it was Zara was saying, you know what? He's actually really lovely as well.
Yeah.
Like a really nice guy. He's got she was saying he's got no ego at all.
It does sound like the sort of thing that he'd be interested in, if I'm entirely honest.
It does. That's the thing. It does. There's a role in it.
Yeah.
There's a role in it, and he would be perfect. It would suit him down to the ground. I mean, the role in question, we kind of also wanted. We were thinking about trying to reach out to Matt Smith for it as well, because he would be very good.
I think, ironically, you'd be more likely to get Mads.
I think we would. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Despite his prominence, because he does do a lot of these very indie products, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
That said, Matt does as well.
Yeah.
And I do like Matt. He's got such a quality about him, where he seems to be both old and young at the same time.
Which is exactly why he was cast as Doctor Who.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's. Looking back on his episodes, I feel it's like when I look at Peter Capaldi's episodes, I love them both as the Doctor. It's just that they tend to be in pretty bad episodes for the most part.
Yeah.
Which is a killer. It's such a shame.
I'm really. I kind of feel bad for Capaldi because he had.
Yeah.
He was for my liking, my favourite of the kind of modern Doctors.
Yeah, likewise.
But he was like Colin Baker before him, crippled by the writing.
Yeah, I can count on the fingers of one hand the episodes I really liked.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, That said, he is in some of the best episodes. I mean, Heaven Sent.
Oh, absolutely.
It's fucking spectacular. That episode. The reason it's good is because it's good science fiction.
Exactly.
That's
easily when Doctor Who is at its best, when it's not trying to mythologise the Doctor and and kind of just make it all about him. It should be
right.
Again, Midnight is another fantastic episode.
That one of my clearly, easily one of my favourite episodes. It's just brilliant. The horror in that episode. Every time I watch it, it's fucking creepy.
It is.
There's one bit that always gets me, and it's when the Doctor is in the cockpit and he's talking to the pilots, and they have to bring down the shutters for some reason. And as they're going down, one of the pilots says, "What was that?"
Yeah.
And he says there was a shape. And it doesn't show you anything.
No.
You don't see it, but he says there was a shape and it was moving. And the Doctor said, "Well, what was it doing?" He said it was coming towards us. It was like,
Yeah. I mean, it's an age-old technique which isn't used nearly enough these days in modern horror. Is showing you nothing.
Nothing. Not a thing. And the fact that they've established that nothing can live out there.
Exactly.
It's like, what is it then?
Yeah.
What can it possibly be? And you never find out.
And
Scary
that is the crux of it, isn't it? That is the monkey's G-spot of the horror in that particular episode, and in similar films like Alien, for example.
Yeah.
Most of that you don't see. You don't see the horror. You just
I certainly don't see it clearly.
You see the bits leading up, and you see the aftermath. You never see the event.
Yeah, it's a brilliant technique. Yeah. It's an absolutely brilliant technique, and it works beautifully.
Yeah. And not used nearly enough.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got a real soft spot as well for like big creature features where you get to see big elaborate monsters, and when they're done well, it's brilliant. Like The Thing, amazing. Absolutely amazing, and that makes a virtue of the opposite, of course, where it shows you, it throws the monstrosity into the limelight.
Yeah, that's that, and then obviously you get into sort of the whole body horror thing of it, don't you?
Yeah,
and that's a whole other flavour of terror, that, isn't it?
It certainly is. It's one of my favourites, though, and again, you don't see it very often these days.
What was the name of that film with the three guys who were backpacking through Norway? Oh, what's it called?
The Ritual.
That's the one, yes.
The Ritual, that was awesome.
Most of that was really good, and then they showed the monster at the end.
I loved it.
Although I think the monster was wonderfully designed.
Beautiful monster.
It really was. I mean, I think that was really the only reason they had to show it, because it was so well designed, but I do think it was slightly detrimental to the rest of the film.
I know. I mean, actually, it's a very different experience from the book. I know the writer of the book, Adam Neville. Before he wrote The Ritual, he was an indie writer like me, Yeah. And in the book, the monster isn't in it. The book is a really different experience. It's more about human horror. More than anything, it's proper folk horror in the sense that it's about folk.
Yeah. I mean, I do enjoy a good horror story where there is no supernatural element to it, where the monster is man, where the monster is an idea, something conceptual, something abstract, which acts through people.
Yeah, I love that myself. Or where it's so ill-defined where you don't know whether
Yes,
it is or it isn't. I
exactly.
love that too. It's the old Blair Witch Project
Yes.
thing, isn't it?
Wicker Man, another,
Wicker Man,
another
obviously, yeah.
original, not that ridiculous remake.
The Nicolas
Oh
Cage one.
God, bees!
The
Yeah,
bees. And of course the punching the person in the bear
yeah.
costume.
That
Wow.
is kind of funny though.
It is, I mean,
Yeah.
I will say that. It is fun to watch. It's a terrible film.
Oh
It
yeah,
should never have been The Wicker
no,
Man.
no,
But then again, like the hubris of that anyway, thinking, oh yeah, there's a film to remake. That hasn't been hit before. Let's do The Wicker Man.
yeah.
God Almighty. Yeah, but no, you're right. The Wicker Man has no supernatural elements at all. Like none.
No, well, unless you count Christopher Lee, because
Unless you
yeah,
can, yeah, yeah. I suppose he does count.
yes, as he is counted before Aspect. Oh, I'll be here all week.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a pun counter or something
Yeah.
as a running gag. But my God, yeah, I love that film. I haven't seen it for a long time though, The Wicker Man.
No, I do have it on DVD.
Likewise, I think a lot of people are really surprised when they come to that film for the first time.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I certainly was. I was expecting.
I
I was
was too.
expecting something more traditional, and some more traditional sort of hammer horror kind of.
Right, right. Well, it's always been. Well, I heard about it long before I watched it. Because people talked about it all the time as like one of these arch horror films. One of like it's part of the DNA, the ancestry of British horror. So when I came to it, I thought, wow, this is going to be like a no holds barred horror film, and it's just not.
No. It is a war of ideologies, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a musical.
It is a musical.
which just I did not know. I did not know there were honest to god musical numbers in The Wicker Man.
Well, when you've got Britt Eklund dancing in the nude, you're going to have my attention.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, it's a strange one because it sort of presents itself. It presents both the protagonist and antagonist as. Sergeant Howie is basically a Karen, right?
Right.
He is like 70s copper Karen, and he's his hubris and his arrogance is so on display in everything he does.
Yeah, and there is an element of him bringing about his own fate,
yes.
isn't there? It's true. I mean, and the characters point this out to him. They give him the chance. They do give him the chance to leave.
And I'll be honest with you, when he sat in that wicker man, burning away, screaming for his god, there isn't a lot of sympathy for him.
There isn't a great deal. No.
So there is some, because it's a horrific way to go, but at the same time, he did kind of put himself there.
Yeah, and Christopher Lee points that out explicitly. He wouldn't have been a worthy sacrifice had he not done that. It's almost like he has to be almost willing,
Yeah.
It's amazing. The coldness of the end of that film as well, where it just zooms into the horizon and you see the Wicker Man collapse.
Yeah.
Like in a traditional film, you'd see like the helicopters coming over the horizon or something.
That would have really fucking ruined it. That would have been.
That would have. Oh. Yeah, it would have been terrible, wouldn't it?
I think.
But there's no redemption here.
No, and the wonderful joyous singing over, kind of played over the horrific screaming.
Oh yeah, Lude Sinkoku, one of the oldest songs on record.
Yes. And
which I know from the Flight of Dragons, bizarrely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ever seen Flight of Dragons?
I may have done many years ago.
Old Rankin Bass cartoon about dragons.
Oh, yeah, like I said, may have done.
Maybe. It is old and it is obscure.
Maybe like 30 years ago or something.
Yeah. There's a bit in that where Lude Sinkoku is sung. Bizarrely. Really bizarrely. And by a Christian knight, no less.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's odd. It's very, very strange. Summaries are coming in.
Indeed.
I also love the fact that it introduces that wonderful ambiguity where Christopher Lee speaks about the religion of the island to Howie at various points and claims like a cynicism towards it. He claims that it's not about, it will not bring forth the fruit, the rituals and whatnot. It's a way of almost pacifying the locals, And yet at the end, he seems to be completely immersed in it.
Well, again, he's very aware of the sort of placebo effects of religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he's quite happy to indulge in it himself.
Right.
So yes,
it's a complex character.
Yes.
That it's a really complex character,
but still played utter perfection. Utter perfection.
Well,
I mean,
it was his favourite film, wasn't it?
Yes.
Up until the point he died, The Wicker Man was his favourite film that he was part of.
Yeah.
Which is ironic given its treatment, of course. Because it was literally buried. Parts of it were, literally buried in roads and whatnot. Parts of it were.
Because they eventually discovered it, didn't they? They put together the director's cut, and you could see see the difference in quality in the added scenes, of course.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but it does make it a much more complete film.
Absolutely. I think I'm gonna have to sit down and rewatch that sometime soon.
Yeah, I haven't seen it for years and years, but it is one of those films. I watched it so much when I was at university that I can probably recreate it in my head, from beginning to end. I remember buying it because I got the DVD of that and Don't Look Now together.
Oh, that's a nice weekend selection, isn't it?
Right, and I remember going home and watching them both back to back. Wow, that was a day and a half.
I don't think I've seen Don't Look Now all the way through.
Don't Look Now is probably one of the most beautiful films ever made. It's so aware of the grammar of filmmaking, of why certain camera shots and why certain compositions occur.
Yeah.
It tells most of its story through that. Through the framing of scenes and the colours that occur in them. It's beautiful. It is a stunning example of how you use visual storytelling. And it's also fucking horrific.
Yes.
There's sequences in that send, every time I see them, chills go up my spine. It's horrible, but also it's beautiful as well. I mean, do you remember did you ever see when Channel 4? It was in the early 2000s. They did their 100 greatest blah blah series. So it was the 100 greatest horrific scenes, the 100 greatest sex scenes, and so on and so forth.
Vaguely, yes.
The Don't Look Now featured in 2 of them, and it was in the top 10 of both, which is the 100 greatest scary moments, which is the end of the film, which is terrifying, and the 100 greatest sex scenes, which is the scene between Donald Sutherland and Judy Christie.
Yeah.
And it is beautiful. I mean, they're both really beautiful examples, but the fact that the film contains both of them, Thanatos and Eros, kind of brilliant, right? And they're both great scenes. They're both really beautiful, meaningful, amazing scenes. The horrific scene is just freighted with meaning in the most dreadful, awful way. And the sex scene comes shortly before that, and it has this almost redemptive quality about it, It's really amazing.
That is something, again, I'm going to have to sit down and watch all the way through.
It's Donald Sutherland's 70s hair.
Yes.
Wow. Really, wow.
It's the hair and the mustache that every porn star modelled themselves after.
Absolutely, yeah, and he gets away with it somehow.
Even
gets away with it.
Even Colin Baker did that at one point.
Oh my god! Wow.
Just search for 70s porn star Colin Baker, and you'll see.
And that's what you'll find. It works for Donald Sutherland somehow. It works for him. But yeah. So Rob, we were gonna chat about Shadow Man.
Yes.
We were gonna chat about Shadow Man, and I'm aware of my own lack of discipline on this podcast. So yeah, Shadow Man. God Almighty! It's one of those franchises where it treated a little better, where it capitalized on when it first occurred, it could have still been around now.
It still is.
It is technically. Obviously, there was the Shadow Man remastered recently.
Well, the franchise itself is the comic books are still being produced by Valiant.
Of course, the comic books are still there. But I mean, in terms of the video, it could still have been one of the big sort of horror franchises. You know
who I blame for that?
Acclaim.
Soul Reaver.
Soul Reaver,
because Soul
right.
Reaver came out at around the same time as Shadow Man.
Yes, yes.
Obviously,
and they were often compared. They were often compared.
And you know, the both are masterful games, but the fact that Soul Reaver was released on both PS1 and Dreamcast to critical acclaim, the PlayStation version of Shadow Man was absolute junk.
That was the first version of it I played, you know. That was the first version of it I played, and it's impossible to play.
Yeah, it's terrific.
It's so poorly optimized. You get to areas like the Asylum. You can sort of make it through the early areas of Deadside, but the minute you get to the Asylum, where there's so much going on, it's impossible. It chugs.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why it should have done that.
Well, no. Well, the thing is, the PlayStation could have handled it. Yeah, it is poorly optimized, largely because it was a last-minute decision to port it to the PlayStation. So they had fuck all time to do it. So that's why.
What a bad decision that was. If it was successful on the PlayStation, then it likely would have been a much more successful franchise overall.
Yeah, I mean, it did get a sequel, but I've never played the sequel, to be honest.
I've tried watching like a Let's Play of the sequel, and I hate everything about it.
Yeah, it looks.
I hate everything about it. The wonderful dourness, that sort of Lovecraftian quality that the original Shadow Man has, is gone.
Yeah.
It's completely gone. In the opening sequence of Shadow Man Second Coming, there's this demon that appears, and it is like a comic book devil.
Yeah.
Red skin, horns, cloven hooves. You play the original Shadow Man, and the notion of that is just, it would have been absurd.
Yeah.
It's antithetical to like the metaphysics that the original Shadow Man sets up.
Exactly. The first game presents you with this notion of Deadside and the absolute inevitability of you ending up there.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, is there? There's nothing you can do. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter how you act, whether you're a good person or a bad person. You end up there. And it is... What I love about it more than anything is that there's no purpose to this metaphysics. There's no God or anything like that. It's like a waste disposal mechanism, isn't it?
If you look at the landscape, it's a little difficult to see on sort of like late 90s 256 by 256 textures, but everything is made of flesh.
Yeah, everything's organic, and it's rotting flesh as well. It's like it's tumescent flesh. It
is the refuse of biology that's left over from countless eons of life.
Right, just being dumped into this place. Yeah. It's horrific, and there's no way out either, is there? It's like when you're there, you're there.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's no like wider metaphysics here, which in a way, I mean, when you look at what Legion's trying to do, you almost have some sympathy, don't you? At least he's doing something to change that status quo.
Yeah, he is the chaos in the order of Deadside, isn't he? He's definitely trying to create something out of this void.
I love the way he presents himself as well, Legion. I love the way he talks to the like the five, for example, the 5 serial killers. The way he talks to them in this seductive way. When he's talking to Jack the Ripper at the beginning of the game, and he talks about building an asylum for all of the misunderstood souls. There's something weirdly, disturbingly attractive about that.
Yeah, exactly. It was Guy Miller, one of the writers for the game, voiced Legion. So, and you can tell that he is the way he has written it down is exactly the way he is presenting it.
Yeah,
it is very much auteurism in this particular regard.
Yeah, this is it's not even like a play of villain and hero, because Shadow Man himself makes it very plain that he is not necessarily a good guy.
No.
You know, and even like he becomes when he's giving the recitations of the Deadside prophecy in the poem, he talks about how the asylum is seductive to him.
Yes.
You know, these scenes and these visions of mutilation and horror and pain and madness are actually really seductive to him.
it kind of makes a change from his normal day job, doesn't it? Really, it's
Well, yeah.
even as Shadow Man, even as like defending Liveside from whatever incursions, it's different. It's way different than the things that he's used to, which are like basically just zombies and stuff.
Yeah.
It is,
and you get the impression that he does it because he's compelled to do it.
Yes.
I mean, he has to do what Nettie tells him to do, doesn't he? That's the thing. He is ultimately an instrument. There's nothing he can do about that. But there is like a sense of him being corrupted by Deadside. As though he could potentially become something terrible there himself.
You hear it every time he absorbs a dark soul.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the delivery of that line clearly suggests that he's thoroughly enjoying this boosting power.
Yeah. Right, and the notion of that is brilliant. In narrative terms, I love the notion that these dark souls are like the very worst of humanity. They're the most tainted, corrupt souls that have ever existed. And that's what he's taking into himself. The horror of humanity.
The horror. I
embrace it. Yeah, of course. And the portrayal of the Dark Souls, the way they're like maggots. It's so brilliant.
Infestation,
it's so wonderful
and parasitic.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, like in mechanical terms, it's also just a very clever way of leading you through a Deadside and through the game. It's your quest, isn't it? It's the item that you have to get to progress. But investing that mechanism with mythology, that's the way to go. That's really clever. It makes it more than just like a fetch quest.
Yes, it is. It really. My vocabulary has gone right down the toilet. It's a very holistic take on game design. It's justifying the mechanics.
That's it. It's something that's really like taken off in recent years with things like the natural evolutions of games like Shadow Man are things like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and whatnot, which are all about that. That every mechanic is actually mythologized to the nth degree, from collecting things to dying. Everything is part of the mythology and feeds into it, and that it starts around this era, of course. With games like Shadow Man. I mean, some games previously on the 16-bit consoles tried it to a lesser degree.
I would say that Shadow Man is certainly part of the evolutionary step. So, I mean, if we consider like modern games like the Soulsborne series, I suck at the Soulsborne game. Let me start that again. I suck at the Soulsborne games, so I haven't really experienced that much of them in terms of narrative and mythology and everything. But the beginnings of that are easily Metroid, Castlevania.
Yep, Metroid, like the Zelda games, obviously. There is definitely like some of the DNA of Zelda in these games.
In fact, Shadow Man was called Zelda's Evil Twin when it was released.
I can definitely see that. And like Soul Reaver as well. Like, it very much is. They're very like mechanically and structurally very, very similar. They are essentially 3D Zelda Metroid games. But the big difference for me between, barring like mythological differences, aesthetic differences, Shadow Man's got much more of an open world than Soul Reaver does.
It does, yes. Soul Reaver
is very linear.
It is.
You have to do certain things in a certain way in Soul Reaver. There's no getting around that. Shadow Man, to a degree, but there's choice. There's options. You can pursue different things in Shadow Man. Every time you play it,
you have there are more pathways. There are more branches on your path. I mean, the game itself does follow a reasonably linear progression. I mean, there are certain things you have to do before you can go certain places.
Yes,
but you can spend as much time as you like in any particular area, searching every nook and cranny. Which is
for so many items as well. I mean, that's another thing. There's just far more to collect in Shadow Man as well. All of which ultimately feeds into how your Shadow Man turns out at the end.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of these items are essential for progressing further anyway. So, for example, there's some, I think, what was it, the flambeau is
The flambeau,
something
yeah.
you use to burn down the skin doors to open up
That's
new
right.
areas and get new hidden stuff.
But it's also a good weapon as well.
It's a
Isn't it? It's
really
like a
good.
tertiary weapon. If you do like the 1-2 punch with the shadow gun and the flambeau, it's brilliant.
Yeah. And again, like the blood claws, which allow you to climb the waterfalls and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. Access different. You can do so. I mean, this is something I didn't realize until. I mean, I eventually did play it on the PC, which is one of the best versions of it.
Yeah.
The PC version's absolutely gorgeous and oddly optimized as well. I mean, often when there are games like that ported to the PC, the controls are a bit iffy or they don't really translate very well. Shadow Man's really good.
I always found the controller a bit iffy on the PC version.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, in terms of just like optimization and the way it looks and the way it plays,
Yeah.
if you're playing it on a mouse and keyboard, it's a little awkward, but it plays really well.
It plays all right,
Yeah.
doesn't it? You know, it's certainly better than the bloody PlayStation version.
Yeah.
But it was then that I realised that, like, before you even, like, obviously your first imperative is to go to the asylum. That's what the game is sort of compelling you to do.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that. You can wander around that early area of Deadside, and there's a lot to do there. There are a lot of dark souls that you can actually access before you've even set foot in the asylum.
I think there's at least 5 or 6 you can get before you get into the asylum.
Which is bloody good going.
And you can pick up the Asson before as well.
Right. I mean, that's something I love about this game more than anything, is that sense of adventure. You know, of a world that's open to you and you just explore it. That gets me every time in video games. It's why I love the Soulsborne games so much, because they do that so well. They are very much like the natural evolutions of games like Shadow Man. And it's hardly surprising, really. It's hardly surprising, given that I also have that original experience of games like Shadow Man and Soul Reaver, both of which I adore.
Yeah, I never did play through Soul Reaver all the way.
Did you not?
No,
I loved.
It's something I need to...
played. Did you play the original one, Blood Omen?
I got Blood Omen, and I'm pretty sure I started it, but I don't think I finished it.
It was a weird game, Blood Omen. It's a top-down, classic RPG.
No, I didn't play. No, I played Blood Omen 2. I didn't get
Blood Omen 2, the 3D one.
Yeah, because GOG were doing a sale on the Soul Reaver series, and I just thought I'll have them all.
As games, they stopped being good after Soul Reaver. They stopped being good, basically. But I did play them all. I played them all up until Defiance, which I believe was the last one.
Yeah, bit of a cliffhanger apparently on that one.
Yeah, the lore is excellent. I mean, the lore is amazing, and there is like a big setup at the end, and then it stops. It stops, and sadly, of course, they can't really do much with it anymore because a lot of the voice actors have moved on or have died.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame. I mean, I don't know how you can even do a Soul Reaver game without Tony J.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, but I don't know. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. I mean,
there's Shadow Man got a remaster. It did. There's plenty of hope for Soul Reaver.
There is. I mean, yeah, Shadow Man recently got a remaster, and it's funny, isn't it? Because Shadow Man was never as popular as Soul Reaver. There's never been as consistent a fan base, but it does seem to be quite concerted. It's sort of like a small cult game these days.
I think one of the reasons it did get the remaster is that Night Dive Studios acquired the rights to it.
Right.
And Night Dive Studios are renowned for remastering these old titles from the 90s. I mean, they did Turok.
Got you.
They did Forsaken.
Right.
And obviously Shadow Man being the most recent. So they acquired the rights to all these games. I thought, well, might as well do something with them. Optimize them for modern platforms, get them out, remaster them.
Well, by all accounts, the remastered Shadow Man is very good.
It is.
It's not just the original game remastered. They've actually added in a lot of the edited stuff.
A lot of cut content.
Which is great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
They had Tim Hayward come in. He's been involved in the remaster pretty much from day one. Tim Hayward was the sound engineer and composer.
Which, again, I mean, if you're going to talk about this game, you've got to talk about the soundtrack.
That soundtrack is absolutely seminal. Absolutely.
Incredible. It's part of what makes the atmosphere of the game. It really is. Because, of course, I mean, this is a PS1 game. And not only that, it's quite an early PS1 game, isn't it? You know?
It came out on the N64 first.
Did it come out on the N64 first?
It was out on the N64 and Dreamcast. It came out on the PlayStation shortly after, and then the PC release. I think.
Right.
Actually,
it's an early.
I'm going to double check that, but I'm pretty sure the PC release was last.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I mean, I know that it was one of the earlier 3D games, wasn't it? You know. From that era, so it needed something a little extra to maintain its atmosphere, and what it uses is the soundtrack. It uses the sound design.
There hasn't been a soundtrack like it before or since.
No, it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. It is simultaneously sort of disturbing, but also awe-inspiring. You get a sense of the grandeur of this mythology.
Yes. And it is beautifully atmospheric and eerie and creepy and epic and intimate all at the same time.
How wildly experimental it is as well at times. Like when out in Deadside, it always has this wonderful sort of tribal mythologism about it, you know?
Yeah.
When you get into the asylum, it gets disturbing.
Yes.
It gets very disturbing. It becomes all industrial.
The playrooms.
The playrooms, which everybody remembers. Yeah, the playrooms, which has got that horrible intermingling of squeaky toys and drills and surgical instruments, and it's so horrible.
And children screaming and
yeah. Because that's another thing, by the way, guys. This game. It's not just the metaphysics that's horrible, it's basically everything in it. The concepts are vile. Absolutely vile. The notion of the asylum is incredible. I love it. It's as Legion intends it to be. It's a cathedral to pain. It's a temple to human madness and suffering. But presented in such a manner as though that's wonderful. As though that's joyous.
It's celebratory, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh God! And what I remember from playing it is the sense of the scale of this place. Because you actually travel the asylum from the heights to the depths. You know, you go through its foundations, you go through its engine blocks, you see every element of this place eventually, and it's huge. Just in game terms, as an environment, it's enormous. I love that intermingling as well of aesthetics. So you have industrial areas married to clinical areas. You have areas underneath it where the machinery is intermingling with the dead stuff of Deadside itself.
Yes.
Love it to bits. You can really get the sense, Morty says at one point that, Jaunty rather says at one point, it just erupted. It erupted out of Deadside at one point, and you can sort of see that there's a fungal element to it.
Sort of creeping out and crawling across Deadside,
corrupting, consuming everything.
And of course, it's located smack bang in the middle of the path of shadow. It blocks your access to a lot of the temples.
Yeah. So there's a desecrational element too. Which is wonderful. It's so creepy. And then you add into that stuff like the serial killers, the 5.
Yeah.
They're obviously all based on real serial killers, every single one of them, you know. From Ed Gein to BTK, they're all here, you know. And they're terrifying. When you actually read their files, they're disturbing people. And the fact that the mythology is awesome. I love this notion that these serial killers have all been impelled to do what they do by this metaphysics. And that's what links them together. You find in each of their murder sites a variation on "For we are many." It's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But I always remember, when you find that area, is it called the Cathedral of Pain?
Yes.
It's called the Cathedral of Pain, isn't it? Where you find the temples that are dedicated to each of them.
Yes, and you have to put a bunch of keys in to unlock portals to their particular layers, don't they?
That's right. Yeah, there's like these corpses, like these ritually sacrificed corpses strung up throughout, and you have to use devices called retractors
That's the
to
one.
open up their chests, like surgically, like surgical retractors.
Yeah.
You know that they use in surgery to pull the ribs back, and that opens up portals to wherever the 5 are located. I mean, one of the things that has been restored in the remastered version, of course, is the different settings for
Yes.
each of the 5.
Yes.
Because most of them in the released game are set in like one area, which is the Gardell County jail, I believe.
Yes, yeah, and obviously it was purely due to memory limitations at the time.
Yeah,
Now,
of course.
no such thing exists, and
Right.
you can have the full experience. And now each of them has their own layer.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
which I'm
brilliant.
very much. I only started playing the game not that long ago. I picked up the remaster a couple of weeks ago. Started it for a bit. I haven't touched it since, and I do intend to
Right.
go through and play it fully because I have never completed the game.
Have you never completed Shadow
I have
Man?
never finished it. No.
I did finish it when I was at university on the PC, and it was one of those things where I was kind of obsessive about it. So it was one of those things where I got everything and got the good ending rather than the bad one.
Fun fact: I have 3 copies of the strategy guide.
Oh right, okay.
It's a bizarre tale. The first copy I bought back in like in the late 90s when I was playing the game, so I'd do it right.
Yeah.
And then a second copy I attempted to buy on eBay many years later because I couldn't find the original. I didn't know where the original went.
Yeah.
So I thought, I don't just buy another one. This was maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But this first copy never arrived. So I thought, okay, fine. I'm never going to see that, so I'll just order another one.
Yeah.
So I ordered that one. The first one comes through eventually after about a month.
Of course.
And then the following week, the second one comes through. So I now have 2 copies.
You have 2 copies.
And then maybe a year or 2 later, I find the original copy in the app. So now I have 3.
3 strategy guides. Well, you're never going to be short of one, are you? You'll always know where one is.
This is very true. They're all in pretty good nick, to be fair. So.
Well, it's amazing to think, isn't it? I mean, a game that was operating under the limitations of like the PS1, the N64, and PCs of the time requires a strategy guide, and it bloody does. It's huge.
It really is.
It's huge.
The game does not hold your hand.
No, God, it doesn't.
No.
It's that's one of the wonderful things about it. There's no like quest markers or anything like that. Occasionally, because of one of the cutscenes, you'll go and see Nettie, and she'll give you some advice on where you should probably go. Or Jaunty will give you a vague clue as to where you might want to be looking. But beyond that, you kind of tackle it how you want. And I've always found like a lot of the areas, the jumping puzzles, the hazards and whatnot, they really require you to think about them, especially in the asylum.
Well, that's because it's labyrinthian, isn't it? It's navigating that, trying to navigate that purely on muscle memory alone. That's horrific. I mean, even with a map, it's difficult too.
Even with a map, it's difficult because you keep running into things like locked doors. You need the engineer's key to open up a lot of it. There are puzzles in there that are really oblique and very difficult to solve, and you often need something that you haven't got at that point.
It doesn't even Dark Souls has more helpful hints than this game.
Absolutely, yeah, even Dark Souls, and that's another game which, like Shadow Man, structured very similarly and also doesn't hold your hand. Where there is this largely just this big open world.
Dark Souls is still the more difficult game to play, but it's...
Oh bloody hell! That's because it's Dark Souls. That's because it's Dark Souls, and that's what they're like.
It's a masochist dream, isn't it?
It's wonderful. I mean, it is. I mean, I didn't even know I liked those games until I played Bloodborne at Ray and John's. I did not know, and then it was a case of, you know what? There is this newly discovered masochistic edge to my gaming, undoubtedly. I love them.
Unfortunately, I don't have the patience for them. I mean, I can appreciate them on an aesthetic and technical and everything. I recognise them to be excellent games, but I just can't. I just can't enjoy them. I don't have the patience to stick around and get good, as they say.
Right, it's true of a lot of people. They are part of what I appreciate about those games is the fact that they know their audience and they just go for it. you know, and they know that they alienate people. They know that they do,
Yeah.
and they just keep going. They don't
I'll be
stop, you
honest with
know.
you. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, if a game
No,
knows its
I don't.
audience and knows it's going to do well with that audience,
Yeah,
why
go
not?
for
I
it.
mean, have you seen the new trailer for Elden Ring?
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, that
God.
looks gorgeous. I
Oh
may even have a go at that, but
yeah, can't wait.
yeah, I mean, it does look really nice. I mean, I've always appreciated the Soulsborne games for their imaginative creature design.
There's nothing like them.
No,
In terms of the monsters, the creatures, the entities you face, there really is nothing like them. I mean, for me, the apex of them thus far is Bloodborne.
Hmm.
The monsters in that are something else. They're something else, especially towards the end of the game when everything goes full on Lovecraftian.
You know what I think would be really great is if From Software could give Shadow Man a makeover.
Jesus,
Give
that would be
give
so good.
Shadow Man as redecorated by From Software.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Give,
that style of game would be
yeah.
perfect for a Shadow Man game. It really would, or for a Soul Reaver game for that
Hmm.
matter.
I, I
It would be just
I
perfect.
would still like to be able to play it though and not
Yes.
tear my hair out in frustration.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would also be a really interesting new dynamic because one thing, I mean, I know there are guns in Bloodborne, but they're not really used as guns. They're the mechanism you use for staggering, you know,
Yeah.
for getting like visceral attacks. You don't really use them as firearms as such. So a game that's based around shooting rather than swordplay would be fascinating in that kind of system.
Well, again,
I'd
I
definitely
think I
go for
think
that.
it's you could certainly play to the charging mechanic of the shadow gun. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, in early levels, that shadow gun is a pea shooter.
Yeah, yeah.
It is completely ineffectual. You have to get the
Hmm.
Dark Souls. You have to charge it up to get it to give any sort of impact out of it. Which is why
Oh
which is why the
yeah.
secondary weapons are so essential for beating some of the more difficult bosses in the
Oh,
game.
they when you at first get like the things you can use as weapons in the other hand, it's a revelation.
Oh, twin violators, twin violators.
Ah, yeah. The
Something so,
violators are
something
awesome.
something that only the N64 and the remaster have been able to achieve. Twin
Yeah,
violators.
yeah.
Now that
Amazing.
Of course, you only get that second Violator once you've got all the other Dark Souls, and you can get that final
Yes.
one in
Hmm.
in the opening, in the very opening. It's in the very opening area. You have to go all the
Yeah.
way back to the beginning of the game, climb up the waterfall, get that last Dark Soul, hop over to the other one, and then pick up the Violator.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just walk around this murderous death machine, and then make short work of Legion at the end of the game.
Yeah, of course, murdering everything in sight. Man, it's one of those games that sustains off of atmosphere, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
And it maintains it all the way through. There is this despite like the slightly cocky attitude of Mike Loire and of Shadow Man himself, it does maintain this wonderful atmosphere. And of course, if you get the bad ending, it's like for me, I like that ending. I think it actually fits with like the moribund quality of the game really well.
I don't think I've ever seen the bad ending.
The bad ending, basically, Legion defeat. Even if you defeat Legion, you don't basically, and he ends up clamping Shadow Man in the heart of the Dark Engine,
Ooh.
in the middle of the asylum, and he extracts the Dark Souls from him and pumps them into the flesh forms that he's
Yeah.
created, that the Dark Souls are being implanted into. He funnels them into them, and the last thing you see is hordes of them marching out of the asylum across Deadside towards Liveside, Nettie shrieking as it happens.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. It's a good. I like that ending myself. I think that's a really. Although the good ending is great too, because you get that wonderful you get Shadow Man as what he is, which is the Lord of Deadside, like striding across Deadside as the master of it again.
As it should.
As he should be,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's something I love too. The aspect of Shadow Man is not an intruder in this place, but the master of it. He's not like, say, Raziel in Soul Reaver, who shouldn't be there. He should be dead, technically.
Shadow Man
belongs.
is a necessary part of Deadside.
Right, he's part of the mechanism of it, isn't he? I mean, and Mike Loire actually acknowledges that at the beginning of the game. You know, he's made such a horror show of his own life that Deadside, as he says, is the perfect hood for him.
Yeah. The asshole of the universe.
The asshole of the universe. Yeah, I mean, that if they ever do a proper remake of Shadow Man, which they potentially could, you know. At this point, I'm not ruling out anything in video games at all, considering the stuff that we have had that's been amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not ruling out anything. One thing I would love to see is more of Mike Loire and his background.
Yes. And
because it's tragic, isn't it? It's really tragic.
But only if Red Pepper is playing it.
Yeah, Red Pepper's got to play it. And also, it's got to be... It cannot be that shit redesign from the second game.
No, it needs to be the gaunt and skinny.
Yeah.
It needs to be the near zombie-like...
the sort of lower-looking guy.
Yeah.
You know, he looks like a Loa, doesn't he? Like a voodoo god of some description. But the one in Second Coming, I just hate. It's too over the top. Yeah. It's way too over the top. And the fact that they buffed up Mike Loire, I hated that to bits.
Yeah. No, I never envisioned Mike looking like
Wesley Snipes, you know.
No, he's
in Blade.
No, he's not. He's even bigger than Wesley Snipes. What's his name?
Yeah.
Old Spice guy. Shit.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I feel terrible for forgetting his name.
Yeah, but I know who you mean.
Terry Crews. There we are.
Yeah, big dude. Yes. Yeah, big dude. That's not who Mike Loire is it?
To be fair, he is closer. He is closer to Wesley Snipes, I think, in terms of physicality. Yeah. I mean, Wesley Snipes is not a hugely buff guy. He's kind of lean and muscular, but he's not. He's not massive. I mean, I think if I were going to pick a live action actor to play Mike Loire, I'd go for Mashal Ali.
Yeah, someone who's a bit more wiry.
Yes, and someone who can actually act. That guy.
I can actually act.
I can't fault Mashal Ali for anything he's done. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, as you say, the comics are still ongoing, of course. So there is potential for something else out there, like not just a video game, but a film or a TV series or something.
Rumor has it that Valiant were working on I think they were working on a movie based on Jack Boniface's Shadow Man.
Interesting. I can see it. I could definitely see it. I mean, will it be any good? Who knows?
Well, I mean, the thing is, there have been different incarnations of Shadow Man, not just in mythology, but within in the franchise. So I mean,
right. So like the tone of Shadow Man changes, doesn't it?
Very much so. I mean, I read the original run of the Valiant comics with Jack Boniface, and it's a very different Shadow Man.
Yeah,
very different mythology. There's no mention of Deadside. The Mask of Shadows.
Right. Deadside doesn't occur, does it? At that point,
the Mask of Shadows is just a paper carnival mask.
Yeah.
And the power itself is very much within Jack. And it's sort of the Mike Loire Shadow Man follows on from that. I mean, it's canon, but it's not quite. They kind of kill off Jack in a very ignominious way. And it's off screen. It's just purely mentioned in some of like peripheral.
Right. Yeah. It's not like a grand transition or anything like that.
I think it's like in Deacon's File or something. He mentions Jack having been thrown off a building with his saxophone shoved up his ass.
There is like an irreverence, isn't there, in the Shadow Man universe? It doesn't take itself that seriously.
No. And obviously it was so if that's this isn't your daddy Shadow Man. This is something new. But interestingly enough, the kind of rebooted universe, starting again with Jack Boniface as Shadow Man, incorporates elements from the Acclaim era. So,
from the video game and whatnot.
So it does have Deadside. The Mask is.
It has Deadside. It has the Asylum turns up at one point, doesn't it? And it also has Legion in it as well.
So it takes a lot of the good stuff from what Acclaim did. And to be fair, Acclaim did do wonders with that intellectual property in terms of.
Oh, I think so. I think they did a great job.
I think Garth Ennis wrote the first couple of issues of the Acclaim. the acclaimed version, and
Mhm.
they're really good.
Yeah.
It really takes the Shadow Man mythos in an entirely new direction, and not in a bad way. Obviously, there are going to be like fans of the original, like, oh, I don't like this new one because,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
that's
Well,
it's the nature of the beast, isn't it? I mean,
it's the nature of fandoms at
yeah,
the
yeah.
moment. I'm afraid. It's why I sort of hover on the edge of them and
But
often don't dip toe in.
yeah, but being fortunate enough to be introduced to Shadow Man through the video game, uh, I think arguably gave us the more interesting incarnation of the character.
Yeah, I would say so. Having read some of the earlier comics, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like them,
Yeah.
they're fine. But yeah, it's not as interesting to me because the metaphysics isn't there, of course.
Of course, they've taken that metaphysics and kind of injected it into kind of Valiant 2.0. So Shadow Man is now closer. It's still Jack Boniface, but it's now closer to Leroy
Yeah.
as a character within a mythology. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and it leads me to think that at some point in the future of that run, maybe eventually they'll kill off Jack and bring in Mike.
And bring in
Yeah,
Mike, yeah. We may even see like a version of the video game story
maybe,
turning up.
maybe. I mean, we can only hope. But
That would be grand. That
it'll
would be really cool.
whatever Valiant wants to do with their IP, of course, is entirely up to them.
Absolutely. But it's kind of prime real estate for like a Netflix show or something to that effect, isn't it?
Can you imagine? Can you imagine a Netflix show run by Brian Fuller?
Wow, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
in the vein of like the first season of American Gods.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, Jesus, yeah. God.
Yeah, I mean, it's ripe for that sort of weird
It
intrigue.
really is, isn't it? It really is. And introducing all of the wonderful horror elements, yeah. The potential is huge.
I mean, just have recast Ricky Whittle as Mike. I mean, why not waste the opportunity?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and given like we've actually started to see fairly successful like video game adaptations now with the likes of Castlevania, which was great.
I'm anxious about Sandman.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult thing. From conception, it's difficult because, of course, the thing about the Sandman comics is that they are different. They're wildly different from one another in terms of like art style, the way the stories work, the mythology. It's always different.
Every story.
So
Well, that's it. I mean, every story in and of itself is a dream, and every dream is subjective, and every dream is a reflection of the dreamer. And
right. So establishing
every episode needs to be something vastly different.
That's it. For it to work for me anyway, everything has to be as experimental and strange and slightly surreal, where everything is vastly different.
And it can't be afraid to fail.
No,
Must not be afraid to do something weird, and not, if it doesn't resonate with the audience, then
fine, whatever.
But it's still true to the source material. It's true to its own story.
It can't be tame.
No,
that's the thing. It cannot be tame.
I really want that the diner scene to be played out as it was. There's a wonderful short film which does that on YouTube. I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's something called The Diner. But
right.
But it is that diner scene where everyone goes crazy and does weird shit. And there's the guy, what's his face, sat in the corner just puppet masking the whole thing, and then Dream turns up and says, "And it over." And you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that conceptually a TV series is the right thing. I'm not sure. I don't know whether it translates well. I'm not sure you can. I'm not sure you can take those comics and create an animation. I could see.
I don't. Well, the thing is the limit of computer generated imagery nowadays is as great as any traditional animation. I don't see the same limits anymore. I think you can do it visually.
Yeah.
It's just simply a case of doing it in a way that the audience can digest.
Right, that works,
Yeah,
that functions, yeah?
yeah. That's
It's
and
a
that and
very
that's a
difficult
challenge.
thing.
I mean, you
Yeah,
could do it.
it's very difficult.
You could do it static. You could do a static image on a comic book page, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't work because you have caption to read.
Right.
You have something to follow on the page. Whereas a moving image on a screen, you have to wait for that to finish.
Yeah.
Your brain is going to try and process that regardless. And by the time it's finished, your brain is still on that last scene, and then the show's moved on to the next.
Right, there's other stuff happening,
Yeah,
of course, as well, and it's yeah. I just don't know how it's going to work. I can't see it. I can't see it in my mind. But then again, I'm very happy to be proven wrong on that because it has the potential to be something like we haven't ever seen before. I mean, I thought American Gods was going to be that initially, and the first season was great. The
yeah.
first season was absolutely amazing, and it contained imagery that I never thought I'd see in like a sort of mainstream streaming show. But sadly, it fell apart, didn't it?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I didn't really catch up that much on season 2 onwards, and
I couldn't. It hurt too much.
yeah,
After the brilliance of the first season, where everything was so interesting and so cool, the second season is a compromised piece of work, and it never should have been.
I think the most disappointing parts of that for me were one, Brian Fuller leaving the showrunner role.
Yeah, yeah.
Gillian Anderson going.
Oh God! I mean, she was so perfect.
And what's his name? Orlando Jones as Nancy.
Yeah.
Basically, without those three,
yeah,
it was never going to be the same.
The heart has gone, hasn't it?
I mean,
the heart has really
one
gone.
of my favourite scenes in that first series is Anansi showing up on the slave ship, basically telling you are all fucked.
Yeah. It was brilliant. It was. I mean, one of my favourite scenes was one I never thought would ever be in it at all, which is the Ifriti scene.
Oh yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
Never thought that, and even if even if it was in it, I never thought it would go.
They did not pull any fucking punches with that one, did they?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. You had a genuine homosexual sex scene in a mainstream show, and like full, like you would have a heterosexual scene.
It went beyond that. It went beyond your standard hetero. No, you got to see glowing balls and fiery spunk. It was incredible.
It was. I was shocked by it in the best way. In the very best way. And also, you know what I loved about it? The two guys who were involved were not like these sanitized ideals of gay men.
They weren't waxed twinks.
No, they were hairy guys. Yeah. They were proper guys, and I loved that. On one level, it's defeating the stereotype for one thing. It's also daring to say to like straight and heteronormative culture, you know what? This is what we actually are. Yeah. And I loved it. I loved it for that. I just wish that it had capitalized on all that brilliance and had been better, And I feel sad that it didn't succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just disappointed that it all started so well, and I was thoroughly enjoying it. This could be, this could be great.
Yeah,
I was looking forward to like other scenes that appeared later on in the book. And no,
I can't really bear to watch it now. If I'm perfectly honest, I can't. It's too disappointing and too raw.
How much wasted potential there is there?
Yeah, because there is still potential in that story. It could be amazing. There's the stuff in the book that is just so shocking. I mean, like, Shadow being crucified at one point. It could be really like, oh my god, this imagery could be so contentious. Depending on how it's presented, but...
Well, they did have him hanging from a tree, didn't they, at one point?
Yeah. It just does, because of the failure of the second season, it just doesn't work. All of that impact has been lost. But then again, maybe Sandman.
Maybe Sandman. I think
Maybe Sandman.
I would have loved to just have a Sandman anthology, entirely original
Yeah.
stories. That way, you don't have to worry about
Yeah.
translating the comic book over. You could do
That's a great
You could do
idea.
something entirely new and entirely different.
Yeah, so make it the Sandman for TV
Yeah,
rather than the comic book. That's not a bad idea at all.
it'd be almost like Doctor Who,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
with Dream playing a lesser role in the story, and more
Yeah.
like just being popping up every now and again to interject with a bit of
Yeah,
advice.
that's a
Or
great idea
yeah,
actually.
the idea of like a hands-off Doctor Who.
Yeah, yeah. Like an observer.
Yeah,
That's a great idea. But then, I mean, there are a number of Neil Gaiman titles that lend themselves quite well to the format of television. I mean, I know there's already been a BBC Neverwhere, but that's a very interesting failure.
I still have that DVD of yours, by the way.
I've still did you still got
I've
it? Yeah,
still got
you
it.
know,
Yes.
I I have an enormous soft spot for that. It's ropey as fuck, isn't it?
Here's the thing about that particular thing. It was filmed to look like it was filmed to be a cinematic.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can see the way everything was shot. It
Hmm.
looks like it should have been on the big screen.
Yeah.
But last minute they decided let's do it on videotape.
Right.
And
Weird decision.
and it looks like TV.
Yeah. It's strange, isn't it? The quality of it is odd.
Yeah,
And it's not necessarily bad, it's just weird.
it is. Although I can't see anyone else other than Patterson Joseph as the
No.
Marquis de Carabas.
Oh, he's so good.
He looks awesome, doesn't he?
Doesn't he? Doesn't he? He was up for Doctor Who, wasn't he,
He
at
was,
one point?
and let's face it, he should have been.
He should have been, yeah. I would have loved to have seen him as Doctor Who.
But
I mean, the way he's playing
I-
the Marquis de Carabas is very Doctor
I-
Who-like, isn't
let's
it?
face it, if he was going to be cast as Doctor Who, I want him dressed exactly like that.
Yeah, I want him as the Marquis de Carabas. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh, wow.
Marquis de
There are things...
Marquis de TARDIS.
I mean, there are things about that adaptation I really love. Things I absolutely adore, but it is very, very ropey.
That's the original. The book was written afterwards.
Yeah, I know, right? The book is great as well. The book is wonderful.
I haven't sat down and read the book, but the series itself. It's the original. It's the source
the
material.
original.
It is the source
Yeah,
material.
yeah.
So, it's reading the book feels like reading like a novelization of a movie.
Like an adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a very good book. It's a very good book. But I would like to see a new series, definitely. Then again, it's a weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that budget would help it.
No. It's a case. I think it's not a case of budget. It's not even a case of talent. It's a case of studios keeping their fucking noses out of it.
Keeping their noses out of things, yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the ideas in the Neverwhere series are brilliant. The fact that it's filmed on site,
Yeah.
in all of these weird, like, little abandoned subway stations and sewer systems and old hotels that are just, like, mouldering in the middle of London. It's awesome.
It's the world beneath trope, isn't it? It's the same. It's the same sort of thing that the Harry Potter series employs.
Very much so.
And I've always enjoyed that because you see it in so many different, to varying extents in different franchises. I mean, Vampire the Masquerade does it as well. In a way, it's not so much like a metaphysical thing, but it's very much a secret society kind of.
Yeah, it's like a world within the world,
Yes.
the world that you don't see that's operating around you. That you're sort of kept from.
It is the reflection in the rain.
Yeah, what I like about Neverwhere is the fact that it doesn't even hide itself. You just don't see it because you don't want to.
It's all very willful ignorance.
Yeah, very much so. I love that, and I love the fact that the main character is sort of pulled through against his own will just by circumstance.
Yeah,
but at the end takes on agency. At the end, he decides. He decides to go back.
It's a wonderful world that I would love to return to.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
I'm, if I ever get the chance to prod Mr. Gaming about this, I'll say we have, some more Neverwhere, please.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he has written other stories in like that
Oh,
universe. The
oh,
Anansi Boys is set in that universe.
oh, interesting. Because I thought, as far from what I remember, Anansi Boys was kind of like following on from
American
American Gods. So
Gods.
it's all folding
It's
in on itself, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. The Anansi who appears in the Anansi Boys is not the same one
Ah, okay,
from American Gods. It's like it is a separate entity, but areas and characters from Neverwhere appear in it.
okay. I never did.
So
Yeah, so I'll need to read that then. It's another thing.
the other
It's another thing on
the
my
other
list of
one,
stuff I need to read or watch. Or it's getting far too long, and I'm not going to have the time to
yeah.
do it.
Well, I mean, did you read the latest? Which is not the latest, but one of the more recent successes Neil Gaiman had, which is the Ocean at the End of the Lane.
I have not read that. No.
Stunning. That was stunning.
Although I did.
That was an amazing book. I couldn't put it down. Could not put it down. It wouldn't work as a series, but it would work as a film. But the kind of film where it has to be like a British produced film. You know, it has to be slightly ropey, and it has to not have a massive budget, and it has to be very local to work.
So basically, as filmed by the cast and crew of EastEnders.
Kind of, yeah. Kind of. But it was beautiful. I loved that book so, so much.
I did see Good Omens.
Oh yeah, Good Omens. Yeah, I'd almost forgotten about it. If I'm perfectly honest, I was sat there going, drooling. What? Oh yeah, yeah. The Michael Sheen and
Yes.
David Tennant just, oh, the bromance. It's so sweet.
Yeah, I'll freely admit it's the only reason I watched Staged.
Yeah, and I loved Staged. I've got to say, I thought it was great. I thought it was really cool. But no, it was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was fun. Good Omens was fun. The book's better. The book's definitely better. The book's got more of like an edge to it.
Again,
There's this real like darkness in the metaphysics of the book, whereas the series was kind of light and fun.
Yeah, I do enjoy. I do enjoy fiction which plays with mythology.
Yeah,
and
very much
sort of
so.
reinterprets it. There's a book called I, Lucifer by Glenn Duncan, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. Basically, Lucifer is slumming it on Earth as you do,
as he does. Yeah,
but he goes into detail about old time and new time.
Yeah.
In that the events that are depicted in the Bible and stuff like that all took place in old time.
Yeah.
And everything that humans have discovered about evolution and everything, that's all took place in new time.
Oh, okay.
So we have that, so we have two realities that are not mutually exclusive, that occur in parallel with each other.
Right. Okay. So it's like, yeah. So they're like the irreconcilable things are both simultaneously true.
Yes.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
So he goes about. He was given the opportunity to. So he's given the opportunity to be forgiven if he can spend a year on Earth as a mortal.
Right. Okay.
So he does, and he ends up becoming like a publisher and a writer and everything like that. And
Right.
Inhabits the body of a writer.
Right. Okay.
Basically, takes over his life. And in the end, spoiler alert, he elects to stay on Earth as a mortal. And the angels show up and say, "Gonna let you in on a little secret. It was never you."
Interesting.
And he's like, "Nah, of course it was me. It's always been me. Nah, it's never you, mate. Enjoy yourself. Ta-da. Bye-bye."
Interesting. Yeah, I do enjoy stories that play with established mythology. I really, really do. I suppose it kind of goes back to John Milton in a way. I mean, if you read Paradise Lost, it takes like the devil and makes him a much more interesting and kind of human and sympathetic character than God. which is a weird thing given that Milton was Cromwell's secretary. How those two ever got along, I just don't know. I don't understand at all.
I don't know how
but there we
Cromwell
are.
got along with anyone. The man was
No,
fucking
well,
arse.
by all accounts, didn't. Terrible human being. Terrible man.
I am not surprised they dug him up and hung him again.
No, I'm not either, to be perfectly honest. If there's one if there's one gravesite that kind of deserves as much desecration as, say, Margaret Thatcher's, it's probably that one, isn't it?
Yeah. Everyone hates Cromwell. Even the fucking English hate Cromwell.
Yeah, of course they do. Although, I wouldn't be surprised these days to find some sort of Cromwell appreciation society amongst the English. My patience and regard for what I suppose ostensibly are my own countrymen is at an all-time low at this point.
Just when you thought it couldn't get any lower.
Right.
Yeah.
And we still keep finding new depths.
Yeah. I mean, I thought I was good at bringing the conversation down into the toilet, but no, the populace of the nation right now.
Yeah.
I don't even entirely blame the populace, because we as a species are easily led. Let's face it.
Yes.
So no,
my colleague Kit Power, who's another writer, we do the podcast What the Hell Is Wrong With Us, he always says you don't blame the mark, you blame the grifter.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah.
That's true to a degree. It's true to a degree.
I mean, it does take a certain amount of willful participation.
Yeah.
But
I only have finite patience with it.
Yeah.
I only have finite patience with it. When it's very clear that the grift is happening, you still keep going back to them.
It's like, they say you can't con an honest man. And let's face it, very few of us are truly honest.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It's absolutely true. But my patience for the English dwindles by the day.
Yeah.
It really does. I've found myself being really nasty to people over the course of certainly over the lockdown.
Yeah, there's nothing like an international crisis to bring out the stupid in someone.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But oh god, if we go down that route, there's so much, and I'm not sure I want to. I'm not sure I want to. I've been trying to sort of keep it at bay, a lot of it. It's like, I'm bowing out.
Yeah,
I'm bowing out.
It's been painful to watch.
Yeah,
this last year and a half.
Uh-huh.
The only semi-decent thing that's happened during this lockdown is the end of Trump's presidency.
The end of Trump's presidency. There was also the statue that went into the river in Bristol.
Oh, that
was pretty good.
The Colston statue.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That gave me a thrill, I've got to say.
That's always been an interesting one for me, because I can understand where the protesters are coming from. They don't want to celebrate, and
that's it.
They don't want to celebrate a man who built their industry off the back of slavery.
That's it, yeah.
If you're going to go the whole hog, you'll need to tear down half of Bristol.
That's true. That's absolutely true. I mean, street names need to be changed, and it's absolutely true. But that's the point, though, isn't it? Because it does bring that into stark cultural focus. The fact that we have to have these conversations now, and it's absolutely the case. I mean, the people who try to stop it, who just want to stay in their little sort of comforting veils of ignorance, get on my nerves profoundly. They're the people who constantly invoke Churchill, though they've never read a history book outside of fucking GCSE like history.
Churchill was no fucking saint, was he?
Oh, he was a cunt.
No, he was an absolute.
He was a total evil cunt, and he was hated.
Yeah.
He was hated throughout the war. He was hated. The defense you always get again from people who have never picked up a fucking history book in their life or a biography or anything. Oh, he won us the war, though, didn't? No, he didn't. No, he fucking didn't. In fact, if you bother to read it, if you bother to read up on it, he would have destroyed us if he had his way. He was so inept and he was so gung-ho. He was constantly being held back by the people around him.
It, it,
You know?
it's remarkable how much history repeats itself when it comes to heads of state.
Yeah, right.
It really is. I mean, Churchill, Hitler wasn't a fucking clever man either.
No.
Most of his best ideas came from other people.
That's right. That's absolutely the case. Yeah.
Hitler was very Trumpian.
Yeah.
Well, it's a weird way to just to kind of switch the descriptors there, but yeah,
Yeah.
Hitler was very Trumpian, just as Trump was very Hitlerian.
That's right.
They both had a knack for winding people up. But in terms of actually doing the job they were elected to do,
No, they were terrible.
Fucking useless at it.
Absolutely terrible, you know? I mean, that's something you get from a lot of apologists, isn't it, these days about the Nazis? Oh, well, at least they were efficient or whatever. It's like, no, they fucking weren't. They ground Germany into the dirt. They were terrible at what they did.
To be fair, if Hitler hadn't started the war, history would have remembered him damn sight better as the man who basically brought Germany back from the brink of destruction. If he decided not to invade Poland, not to start, sending Jews to death camps.
Yeah, right.
History would have favoured him a lot more. But he was a twat, so clearly he couldn't help himself. And greatest evidence of this is when he decided to send troops to Russia, because he didn't read the history books and saw that Napoleon tried that
hubris, the hubris of that.
When you better pack some fucking winter clothes, mate.
Yeah, not only that, but like Russia, their armed forces at that time,
terrifying.
Right. There are accounts in history books that are like insane, of like single Russian soldiers holding up entire battalions by setting traps and things in areas that they knew about, and the terrain that they were familiar with. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable stuff. But the amount of shit that's not true about World War II that we assume, because that's kind of what cultural narrative tells us is true, is unbelievable. Like, the big one, of course, is that we won the war, quote unquote. We didn't win the war, we survived it.
Yeah.
We survived the war, and barely. Britain was in bits by the end of it. It was in total shambles by the end of it.
Most of Europe was.
Absolutely. Most of Europe was burning.
The war ended largely because no one could carry on anymore.
Right, yeah. We were reaching extremists, weren't we? We were reaching extremists.
And I think even with the Americans turning up late, it still wouldn't have been enough, really.
No.
And I know the Americans love to say, if you weren't, you would have been speaking German. No.
That's another myth.
Teaching the English to speak German? It would never have worked.
But beyond that, that's another myth.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a total myth. If there was, like, the big war was between Germany and Russia.
Yeah.
That's the truth of the matter. It's not the narrative we're told, It's not the narrative we like to have as the British, But that's the truth of it. There's just so much bullshit. I mean, the biggest myth that we operate under is the Blitz spirit.
Oh yeah.
There's no such fucking thing. No. There was no such fucking thing. You're either where the bombs dropped or you weren't. That's the truth of the matter. It's just, oh my god, the mythology, and the way it's used as a kind of a bludgeon by the ignorant to browbeat us all.
The saddest thing about it is even the people who were there, who lived it, don't know. Because propaganda flying at every which way, and most of the people who were there were either survivors of bombings or fighting or soldiers fighting. And either way, you are going to be bombarded with BBC nonsense.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. It's just not as simple as like meta-narrative and culturally prescribed narrative would have us believe. Nothing ever is. But I'm finding myself like continually these days really butting my head against it. And talking to normal people is difficult, I find. because they believe such nonsense because it's been fed to them by the BBC or by like the Daily Mail or the Sun or whatnot.
It's even it's school curriculum as well.
Yeah, right.
That's the annoying thing about this whole situation. Like the facts are there. More accurate accounts of events are documented and available for you to research and look at. They're in history books. Why are they not being taught?
Why are they not being taught? This is the thing. I mean, I remember having a discussion about the last election with someone, and they said to me, I said to them, was I the only person in Britain who read the fucking manifestos of the parties? Because it seems to be the case to me. And she said to me, oh, well, I haven't got time to do. Well, my response to that is, then why did you vote at all? If you can't make an informed vote, if you haven't got the time to just do something as basic as read the fucking manifestos, then don't vote. Do us all a favour and don't vote, alright? Because you're voting on the basis of nothing. On the basis of enshrined ignorance. But that seems to be generally the case, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen anything as filthy as the last general election in this country. Never seen anything as filthy. The lies. The lies that were thrown at us are just unbelievable.
It was a really weird one for me because there was no good vote for me. If I was pure self-interest, I couldn't vote for any one of the major parties because they all had something that would be of detriment to me.
Right, I'm at that point now where there's no one I can vote for. There's no way I could ever vote for Labour under Keir Starmer. There's just no way. The man's a snake. So that leaves those of us who have sort of like socialist leanings just out in the cold, you know. There's nowhere to go. Which is a bizarre place to be, you know. The party's called fucking Labour. It arose out of the miners' union, you know. It was socialist. It's supposed to be socialist. It's supposed to be the left-wing alternative.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, no one likes the word socialist anymore.
Right. And again, this is something that fucks me off. Everything is Marxist. Everything that the right doesn't like, or that the mainstream doesn't like, is Marxist. And the vast majority of the people using the term have never fucking read Marx.
Nope.
Or the term socialist. They've never read the manifesto. They've never read Das Kapital. So they don't understand what they're talking about.
Nope.
It's a boogeyman word, you know, it means nothing. It's empty.
It reminds me of a funny little GIF meme I saw on Facebook of Bernie Sanders just going boo and the word socialism popping up.
Yeah, that's basically it. People just not understanding.
They conflate
understanding.
The Americans like to conflate it with communism.
Right, which is bizarre. Not only that, but like you've now got this entire species of right-wing talking heads who have cropped up in recent years, like Jordan Peterson, like Ben Shapiro, who conflate Marxism with everything. Like Jordan Peterson is the one for me. He begins almost every lecture, sermon and video conflating Marxism with the weirdest things. So he'll say the term Marxism and then he'll say postmodernism as though they're the same thing. And I'm like, I've read Marx, and I've read a lot of the postmodernists, right? I've read Baudrillard and I've read Foucault. And I have no fucking idea what he means when he uses those terms in that context. I've no idea. And you know what? He doesn't either.
No, even if he did, it's still just disingenuous.
It's disingenuous, isn't it? It is just like, it's a way of making an argument or a sermon seem credible and academically viable.
It is fucking word salad is all it is.
It's word salad, yeah. And I'm telling you, Jordan Peterson is he is the high king of word salad. High king.
He is the Jamie what's name of, what's his name? I'm terrible with names.
Yeah, he is like the Gordon Ramsay of word salad. That's who he is.
That's a chef. There we go.
Yeah.
less sweary though.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Jamie Oliver, that was who I was thinking of.
Jamie Oliver, right? It's amazing to me because and they know that their audiences are so incurious that they are not going to go and research this. So they're not going to call them out on it.
They didn't know.
Their chances, you know.
I think you'll find that most audiences, regardless of political leanings, are just bullshit sponges anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, you're right. There is a complete lack of intellectual curiosity and willfulness to learn and educate oneself on, matters that literally affect your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Or your family's lives.
And for me, it's that willingness to surrender.
Yeah.
I mean, people like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro have been categorically demolished on every point they make by people who are much more well informed than they are. And it's been overt, it's been done a million times, and yet their followers, the people who have placed faith in them, will perform the most amazing circuitous mental gymnastics to try and apologize for it, to try and justify their continued adherence and hero worship. I mean, don't get me wrong, I feel for the guy for what he's recently been through, okay? So his wife got cancer and he became very depressed, got addicted to benzos. And then rather than following his doctor's advice, being the egotistical prick that he is, decided, I'm going to go to Russia in the midst of a pandemic and place myself in the hands of some quack, who then places him in a coma for 3 months, and he comes out of it with COVID and permanent brain damage. After that, he goes on to proclaim, oh yeah, I'm writing another book, 12 More Rules for Life, because I'm a great authority on how to live your life, right? It's like, what planet am I fucking living on? Am I an extra dimensional alien on Safari that got left behind or something?
It's kind of weird. As you were describing that whole sequence of events, the only things that popped into my head were Dante's Divine Comedy, just 3 words: avarice, hanging, self-destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I don't know why. Just seemed fitting, really.
It does seem fitting, but it's the kind of thing where I've just been like, you know what, I'm out. I don't even want to know anymore. It's so insane to me that people are surrendering themselves to these grifters, these obvious grifters, you know, and taking their advice as though it's somehow sincere, when it isn't. It clearly isn't. I can't handle that. I find that very difficult to cope with because I just want to pick them up and shake them, you know, and shriek, "Think for yourself" in their faces.
Some people have had success in appealing to ego, and managing to convince people that that had been duped, that had been conned.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get them just right, they'll be fucking furious about it.
Yeah.
And obviously they won't blame themselves, but they will certainly direct their ire towards the grifter.
Yeah, which is great. Yeah. That's all you need, really.
There's a wonderful success story I saw on YouTube quite recently. A chap called Ranty, who spent much of his time as a flat earther.
Right.
And eventually, he was convinced that what he was spouting was nonsense, and has since done a complete 180 and has dedicated his channel to debunking flat Earth, which I think is a lovely thing.
That's great. Yeah, it's like when an anti-vaxxer finally comes round, isn't it? You know.
Although usually that's after some sort of tragedy that's happened.
That's right. That's bizarre because it has to happen to them, doesn't it?
And that's the genuine tragedy, is that they wait that long.
Yeah.
Someone has to be hurt in order for them to pay attention.
But the amount of people who have fallen down that rabbit hole is unbelievable. And there have been people who I know personally who I can only assume that the psychological pressures of COVID, the lockdowns, were much more profound than I could ever have imagined, and it broke them somehow. Because the number of people who started to go down that conspiracy theory, anti-vax rabbit hole, clever people, shocked me. Really shocked me. It's like, wow. And it's the degree, the intensity to which they go down that rabbit hole, and how vicious they become, how viciously defensive they become. It's like, wow. Because I don't have any cotter with that. I don't deal with that. It's like racism to me. It's like, nope, fuck off. Yeah. Don't want to deal with you. The guillotine comes down and that's it.
Yeah.
Because that shit is dangerous. That's dangerous to us all.
Should we take a 5-minute break?
I think actually, shall we wind up and maybe go on for a sequel to this?
Yeah, why not?
Because I've got to be getting to bed relatively soon.
Not
Brilliant. So when we come back, do you want to continue talking about Shadow Man and just about? We can talk about anything really. We can carry on. I don't mind talking about D&D.
Yeah, why not? Let's talk about the fun things instead of how the world is turning around us.
Absolutely, yes. Let's do that because I think that's far more productive. Yes. To be perfectly honest. Excellent.
We'll save the world with homebrew spells.
We'll do that. Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact you can do that now. I mean, you could do it before, but there's like mechanisms for it now, aren't there? They've actually built it into the game of D&D, which is awesome.
Yes.
Before we go, Rob, is there anything you'd like to pimp out? Is there anything you'd like the people out there to know about?
Well, I am currently editing a podcast, which hopefully will be up at some point in the future. It'll be called Dicey Antics, a D&D podcast. Where myself and 3 other chums play some D&D. Don't expect Critical Role levels of professionalism. This is literally just a bunch of nerds talking shit for 4 hours.
Likewise, it's like my D&D games, fast and loose.
But we've got to a point now where the characters are cemented and the adventures getting good, and so we thought we'd start sharing the game with everyone.
That's brilliant. It's a good thing to do at the moment as well. Those D&D channels do gangbusters.
Yeah, so
I love them. I've got to say, I'm kind of addicted to a lot of them. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't be fun. Sitting watching other people rolling dice around a table should not be fun, but it bloody is.
It is. I'm going to recommend one for you. Dimension 20 did an evil campaign,
wow,
6-part campain. It's sort of like the reverse of Lord of the Rings. So they're playing like the villains of a Lord of the Rings-esque adventure. So there's sort of parodies of like ring wraiths and hobbits and stuff like that. So I thoroughly recommend that one.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
The DM in that is a guy called Brennan Lee Mulligan. He is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend you see it.
Awesome. I will be seeking that one out, definitely. I like my evil campaigns, I've got to say.
Escape from Bloodkeep, it's called. That's what it is.
Escape from Bloodkeep, okay. That's like almost like it's a parodic name already, isn't it? Great fun. Is that everything?
That's it for now.
Is that it for now? Okie dokes. Oakley dokely. For me, loves, it's the same as usual. You can find me knocking about here on Exaggerated Elegy. There's a couple of Let's Plays going on at the moment. Resident Evil 7 and also my 3rd Let's Play of Bloodborne. Oh my god. Yeah, well, you know what happened? It was the 6th anniversary of Bloodborne this year.
Of course, yeah.
And I intended to do just a couple of maybe a couple of hour videos just talking about how much I love it and just playing through the first sections. No. Turned into a Let's Play. Turned into another Let's Play. So yeah, I'm near the end now. I'm nearly done. There's a new short story collection up for pre-order right now over at Perpetual Motion Machine Publications. There's links below, by the way. Born in Blood Volume 2. There is also a pre-order, and my publisher surprised me with this, which is really lovely. There's a pre-order for both books. You can get both books in one pack, Born in Blood Volumes 1 and 2 up for pre-order, which is fantastic. If you want to purchase any of my other published stuff, go over to strangeplaygrounds.com and you'll find links to that. Barring that, if you fancy a chat, come over to Twitter and find me at Enigmatic Elegy. Rob, thanks so much, man. It's been great catching up and chatting.
It has. Thanks very much for having me. It's been
really good. No, my pleasure. My pleasure, man. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.